Today's guest on Finally Seen is someone who is redefining how we think about sales, not just as a hustle, but as a human to human connection. Kandis James is the creator of the Scaling Sales Formula, host of the Scaling Sales Experience, and a powerful voice for soul aligned selling. With over 2 decades of experience and a background in mindset, mindfulness, and NLP, which she'll explain what that is, she helps coaches and course creators, and really all of us, sell with confidence without ever compromising their values. And so, if you've ever felt allergic to sales, but know it's the next step in your growth, this conversation is for you. So please welcome Kandis James. I am so excited you're here, Kandis. I absolutely love our conversations, and I feel like we met years ago, but it was just recently. So thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for having me. And yeah, I'm just excited to see where this goes because no matter what you and I meet to chat about, it always goes in 2,500 different directions. So let's see what comes to the table today.
Yeah, to give the audience some context, so we met through a mutual friend and we just hit it off. And before we know it, I think it was like, what, 3 hours or something? It was an insane amount of time that we were like, oh crap, we should probably, go back to work. Um, but, it's amazing. I think your brain is amazing. I think your spirit is amazing. So I'm excited to share you with my audience. So one of the things that I really like about your method is that you're talking about approaching sales a different way, not the ick factor or not the bro marketing or bro sales tactics that we see so much out there. And before the show, I was telling you that, there are lots of sales gurus out there that are self-proclaimed gurus. You actually have the receipts on what people you've worked with and the stuff you've done. But this particular one, they're constantly talking about taking away the sale, which I understand the concept. I get it. But the particular way that this person wants you to position the way you say that sentence kind of gives me the ick factor because it feels like, oh, I can read through that tactic. It's like, I know what you're doing. You're trying to take the sales away. So, tell me about your approach to sales and how you approach it so differently.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so funny. Just a little background before I dive into that. It's like there are certain tactics out there that people are taught. And sometimes when I'm interviewing people, like I also train and run sales teams for different CEOs and entrepreneurs. But when I'm doing like the hiring process and they'll get into something, I'm like, I know exactly who you look up to or who was your mentor. And we may need to pull that back just a little bit if we're going to succeed on my team. Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
I can see
one of
them.
you say is, and
Yeah, I'm like, okay, I know exactly where we're going here. And, maybe there's a different way that we can approach it. And, I grew up, I've been in sales, like you already mentioned, my first job was in sales and I just continued. And not only that, but my father was in sales, used car sales of all things for 41 years. And growing up with him, like, I just really realized he was in the top 1% that entire time through across the country. And he just had repeat customer, referral, referral. Like, not only could he just grab someone off the lot and sell to them, but he also had so many people coming back to him time and time and time again. And I watched him doing that all my life. And that's really where my framework has stemmed from. And it has done me so well over the years, from high ticket. My first job was in selling jeans, like clothing. Um, and I realized really quickly the difference between the people on the floor that were not hitting their quotas and how I was approaching it. And really, it comes down from like a compassion based selling system. And it's not about the sale as much as it is to be able to connect with that person and really see, is there a solution here for you? You have a problem, which is what sales is, right? Somebody's got a problem and they need it to be fixed. And they're coming to you because they're curious. Can you solve this for me? And then you listen and you sell from that heart-centered space. And the shift in sales, like when I'm coaching my clients, the moment that we shift into the way that I teach and the formulas that I use, they're like, oh my gosh, not only am I closing so much more, but I'm getting off of these calls feeling like excited and full, whereas before they were getting off feeling drained and all the different things, right? So it's just a really different way of connecting. And one of my clients showed me recently a reel from somebody else who, teaches sales. And they were like, take the human out of sales. If you are in sales, you should not be human. And I was like, okay, wait a second.
Interesting.
And so she asked me to comment on it. I commented on it. My dad called and I was like, listen to this. So I showed him the reel and he was like, yeah. He's like, that's the way to get one sale. He's like, but if you want them coming back and referring people, that is not the way to get sales. And that's really the big difference, right? Is if you want people to feel like, wow, what an amazing call. And I'm really excited to work with this person, there is definitely a level of compassion, heart centered space that needs to be held in order to do that.
I love that. And I love that you frame it that way because that sets the tone for the campaign or the project or whatever it is. Because, if, especially with small business owners, if you're dealing with, small business owners, sometimes they don't have a lot of, extra cash lying around. So, while they've got money to invest into whatever problem you're solving for them, they need to make sure that it's well spent. And so having that conversation where, like you said, the person being sold to or having their problem solved feels great about it and they're excited that you're coming on to solve their problem. They're going to put a better energy behind the exchange of that money and project. And so I absolutely love it. And I love tell me about you have different ways to work with you too. And I know that's jumping ahead a little bit, but I want people to know that there's an easy way to learn how
Mhm.
to be heart-centered.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a program called the Scaling Sales Formula. So that's really for anybody who does their own sales calls or has a sales team that needs to improve. So I've actually had a lot of entrepreneurs put their sales team into the program as a whole. So I have that available. I also do one-to-ones, which is more of a sales system overhaul. And as well, there are different types of offers. I do a lot of like fractional head of sales for various companies and just ensure that you're on the right foot. And then, of course, I have a retreat coming up and I do speak on stages and all that sort of stuff as well, which is really fun. And I also offer workshops, so personalized workshops for yourself or your company, depending on what it is specifically that you need.
Awesome. I wanted you to say that early too, because I wanted people to start thinking, just because you do have such a different approach to sales, it's not always beat closing and the regular stuff that we've all heard for years. And you do say though that sales is 80% mindset. How did you come to that realization?
Well, it's interesting, right? So, a lot of also what I use in the formula that I teach is a lot of subconscious work. So, you mentioned earlier that, I'm an NLP practitioner, which is basically neuro linguistic programming. In other words, learning to speak to the subconscious mind. So, when you're dealing with somebody in any case, so you're sitting here right now and I'm hearing what you're saying to me, but you're also having thoughts in your head, you're having experiences, right? I don't know what you're saying in the background. That's not where I wanted to take this. Or, oh, great. I don't know what you're saying. And then also, you're having experiences. So I could say something that might trigger you in from something way long ago. And all of a sudden you have this really big emotional reaction. And I'm completely unaware because I think that we're talking about me selling you this new pencil, right? And you're in this whole other world that I'm unaware of. And so when we are doing sales, there's two things that I really speak about is that sales, people purchase 80% from emotion and 20% from logic, right? This is a stat that's been shared forever and ever. But the other part is that we are always speaking to both the conscious and the subconscious.
Nobody talks about that.
Yeah, or they do. And I have a few people in mind that talk about that, but they use it almost as like, here's a really sneaky way to
Mm,
get people to say yes, right? And I've seen a lot of people use some of these techniques like that. And I promise you, I only use it for the good. And I assure my clients only to do the same thing. It is a very powerful technique, but the way that I use it is to just put the person at ease.
Yeah,
And
not manipulate.
exactly. I want them to feel at ease. I want them to feel seen, heard, understood. Like, oh my gosh, this person gets me. This person is who I need. I'm fully understood. And we make a lot of mistakes as simple as not using the exact same words back to the prospect. So, the best example I can give is if somebody said, oh, I'm doing this because I want to provide for my kids. And you said, oh, you're doing this because you want to provide for your family. And if somebody
Mm,
has, I'm sure we all have at least one person in our family that we're like, ugh, wouldn't be doing it for that person.
that's funny.
So that could trigger in the subconscious mind. And now the subconscious is on defense mode. And we never want to get
That's
the subconscious there. So that's part of why we're talking about in the mind. And then also, everyone who does sales in any capacity knows that it's a bit of a roller coaster. You get 5 sales today and then you don't get any for a week or what have you. And so being able to maintain your own mental state and energy is wildly important. And, that's where I bring in a lot of the mindfulness and everything. As a trained mindfulness facilitator, bringing those aspects in can help you have a more positive and effective career in sales as well.
I love that. And it's such an important lesson for entrepreneurs, especially in the beginning, because entrepreneurs are wearing so many hats and they often do have to do sales. And yet that's not what they're passionate about. That's not what they went to school for. That's not something they're necessarily trained in. So I love that you can swoop in and put them at ease and go, no, you actually can sell. Let's just reframe it a little bit. You're not taking people's money. You're solving
Exactly.
it.
You're solving their problem, right? And so really that's as simple as sales as I can make it is they have a problem and your job is to discover if you believe that you can solve it. And if you believe that you can solve it, then you owe it to them to show them that. Because the biggest thing behind any objection is a fear or a belief. And so they often are not putting their highest version of self forward when they say no. And so, as somebody who says, look, I have a solution, you can have what you want if we do this, holding that value for them, because sometimes you're going to be the only person that ever sees their true possibility. And so, you get to allow them to sit in that and see that.
I love that you said that you owe them that to show them how you can solve the problem. And I wish I would have had training from you a long time ago. But this one particular sale that I can think of that I lost to another company, I watched the campaign roll out and it just kind of fizzled. And it made me so frustrated for them because I truly saw the potential in the brand and in this person, and to see that they probably spent more money than I was going to charge, and to see that it didn't get the results that I know they were looking for. It was a bummer for me. Obviously, it worked out the way it was supposed to, at least for my end. Maybe they'll come back later. I don't know. But I can now see where, you owe it to them to fully explain how you can actually help them. And you
Yeah.
have on your Instagram, to get a little personal, you talk about your type 1 diabetes diagnosis and how that actually is a brilliant way to look at sales. I'll let you kind of explain that.
Type 1 diabetes, I got diagnosed pretty late in life. So I got diagnosed just in 2022. So I'm coming up on my 3-year anniversary. And I can't remember. I know that there was one I did recently. I can't remember exactly what I was referring to there because I've referred to it many times. Do you remember what I was talking about on that one?
You were talking about how the doctor didn't check the underlying markers.
Yes, thank you, thank you. So I was basically diagnosed with type 1. So I've had high blood pressure for like ever. I was working out all the time. I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing, and it was just high. Nobody could figure it out. Which technically could be a telling that there is type 1 diabetes on my genetic markers, right? So, but this doctor never really tried to figured out that part, etc. And one day she gave me some different medication for my blood pressure, and it triggered the type 1 diabetes, and boom, I had it. And I probably would not have gotten type 1 if I didn't have that medication, right? So had she known what was really going on in my system, then I wouldn't have to be injecting insulin all day, which is fun, super fun. But it really comes down to sales in the fact that when people are giving objections and when they're talking about, why they can't do this right now or they don't have the money, it's really not typically about those specific things. There's something underneath that. I don't have the money could mean I feel guilty spending it on myself when I have kids that maybe I should be taking somewhere. Or I don't want my partner to, be upset with me if this doesn't work. Or, the list goes on and on and on. And so many times what I see is, people stop at the first objection and just go, oh, okay, call me later if you change your mind, versus really getting to the bottom of it. And that's, how you're going to, when I say like hold them to their highest version of self and show them what's possible, it means digging in. What's beneath that? You got on this call with me. There's some part of you that wants this. And so let's speak to that part of you instead of the fear based part of you.
I love that. I think that's something that a lot of people get stuck in. They operate from a scarcity mindset. They operate from fear. And I guess women, especially, like we've been taught to kind of shrink ourselves a little bit, whereas guys are like, "Yeah, I'm awesome. Buy from me." So, what do you tell women when it comes to, shifting from that scarcity or that asking permission and all of those mindsets?
Yeah. Essentially, one of the biggest things I talk about is authority, right? We often get nervous when we are selling because it's almost like we feel like we are on trial. We are at an interview, a job interview or something, right? We have to prove ourselves. And it feels a little bit nerve wracking, right? But when we
Hmm.
take the focus off of, I'm selling something, and hey, I really have a solution for people who need XYZ. You think about it like going into the doctor, right? If you come in and you're like, oh, I've got this like cough and this like rash on my neck. I don't know if these are ever related, but whatever. I've got these two symptoms, and what can you do? And if the doctor was like, well, if you wanted, you could try this cream. There's a couple different kinds. I don't know, like what one you would prefer. I'd be like, I don't freaking know. That's why I'm here talking to you, right? And so I don't know which of those creams is going to be best. I'm going to the doctor. The people who are looking to you and asking to talk to you don't know what's best for them, or else they wouldn't be talking to you. And so you don't want to be that weird doctor who's like, I don't know, which cream do you want? Right? We need to own our authority. And I think, particularly in the way, and I work with lots of men as well, and it works extremely well. But I think in this type of selling, women have a little bit of an edge because we are by nature very compassionate, empathetic people, humans, right?
Hmm.
And so we have a little bit of an edge on that. When we can lean into that and utilize that to get that sale by literally truly connecting with these people and using that, in my framework, there's like the 3 C's, which is connection, curiosity, and compassion. And that should lead through any sales conversation. And when you do that, it becomes a lot easier to maintain that authority and, really focus on like, look, I'm just here because I want to help you.
Yeah, I can see how that compassion can come across even on a Zoom call or um, interesting. So, you talk about two identity shifts that happen in the sales process. Are you talking about identity shifts with the person selling or with the person who's purchasing?
More so with the person who is purchasing, right? If they're stuck in objections, because there's something that's blocking them. It could be something that they were told when they were 4 and it's blocking them now, right? So we're basically helping them shift into a new version of self that sees what they want as a true possibility, right? And on the as the salesperson as well, it's funny. A lot of my clients are like, "Wow, I don't even need to go to therapy anymore." Like we're digging into like so much other stuff, right? Because the tools that I teach during a sales call and everything is really beneficial really anywhere, right? And a lot of times, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, Chrissy, yourself, but like sometimes when you're working with a client or you're talking through on a sales call, it's almost like they're mirroring things in yourself that you may need to work on or think about, so you start to kind of notice those. And as you're kind of talking to them, you're kind of talking to yourself at the same time, right? So, but I would say, being able to learn how to lean into that authority and be really confident in that is going to also ripple out in your life. Um, and then also, the client is going to start to shift the way that they see themselves, sometimes even just on that first call.
Amazing. I love it. I love the way that you explained that. And speaking on that authority thing, a lot of times people struggle with the follow-ups. Like, oh gosh, am I bothering them? Am I begging for money? How do you help people shift their mindset when it comes to that follow-up? Is it again that, look, you're simply, trying to help them solve this problem they said they had?
Yeah. So there are what I call mind traps that we get ourselves into. Um, And I have like little cards for my students. Basically, they can like print them out and carry them with them. And I used to use this when I was just doing mindfulness facilitation. I would do big trainings on this. But essentially, there's like these different mind traps that we get ourselves into. Catastrophizing, exaggerating, mind reading is a huge one, right? So we
Uh,
believe that we know what that person is thinking, and you most of the time don't. Even if you know the person really, really well, you still don't always know what they're thinking. And so we look at what are those mind traps? What are we getting ourselves into? And then there are antidotes that I prescribe based on what you're feeling. How do we work through that? And that really is a big thing in follow up. The amount of people that are so scared to follow up. Meanwhile, like, have you ever, gone and talked to somebody about something and you're like, yeah, I'll get back to you. And then life gets in the way and then they never get back to you. And then you completely forgot about it. And then you don't even remember their name. I'm sorry, I'm terrible with that stuff. Like, I'll just be like, wait, who was that I talked to? And now it's just gone. I'm like, well, I'm not going to find that.
yeah.
There's
Yeah,
so
but
many
it's
times.
something you really actually did want. Yeah.
Yes. But then life got in the way and yada, yada, yada. Right. So you're actually doing them a favor by following up. I think it's also really important to remind them of why. So I have a whole formula and everything inside the program of like best processes for follow up. But as far as the mindset piece of it, like follow up is so important. And the reason that people often don't follow up is because they're scared of the word no. They're scared of looking a certain way. Yeah. We're scared of our own judgment or like judgment from others on us. Oh, they're really trying to get this sale. Well, yeah, you came out to me and said, hey, I'm interested. So now I'm going to follow up with you and be like, are you still interested? Right. And if if you said to your friend was like, hey, we should get together this Thursday. And you were like, yeah, which restaurant do you want to go to? And then like 2 days go by and you haven't heard from them. Are you going to be like, should I ask them about the restaurant? Or are they going to think that I'm being ridiculous because I want to know what restaurant we're meeting at?
I love that. Yeah, you're
Right.
you're so right. And I'm thinking back to times that I've followed up with people, and my thought process was the very same thing. Like, what? Why are you ghosting if you were the one that wanted me, in the first place? Like, okay, just tell me no
Hmm.
if that's case, but
Yeah. So,
yeah.
it's beyond like the actual formulas that I have for the follow-up. The main thing is, get out of your head about that, right? Is you're following up, you're doing them a favor. Um, and I'm very strict about follow-ups. I'm very authoritative in my follow-ups. They know exactly what's coming so that they're not surprised. I'm like, this is what we're gonna do. This is how you're gonna hear from me. This is what's gonna happen. There's all these different facets to my follow-ups, but
Love
it
it.
gets the best results. Right. And I know that I'm doing them a favor. And I learned from my dad at an early age, you don't stop until they say no.
Love it, love it. I mean,
That's the worst thing
especially
that's going to happen.
well, and, and especially if like I said earlier, they came to you and you're giving them a good deal, you're solving their problem. Like it is a genuinely good thing for them. And you're right about the times that I can think of myself that I was super interested in something. And I can think of something right now that I have forgotten multiple times. I got, oh, I need to go to that cart. I need to go to that cart. And the salesperson has not followed up with me once, but I am genuinely interested. I just keep getting distracted. And
Mhm.
but if they were to follow up, I'd probably be like, doing it right now. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So you're
Right.
100% right. I would not think she's bothering me if she followed up.
I'd be like,
And
oh,
this is not
thanks.
even a big ticket item. So it's like definitely follow up. It's not if it's not big ticket for sure. Like that's easy. It's no brainer money. Duh.
Tired of overpriced energy drinks full of junk? Same. That's why I use Babello, a self-carbonating hydration packet that gives you clean energy, electrolytes, and vitamins without the crash. Just add water, shake, and sip. It's way more affordable than typical energy drinks and way better for you. Use code ChrissyBernal15 at checkout to get 15% off at drinkbabello.com. Hydration just got an upgrade.
Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier about mind reading. I feel like we do that a lot. Like, oh, they're not going to be able to afford me. None of your business. How do you know?
Exactly. We often put our own projections onto other people, right? Or even our own fears. So if you're even a little bit like, oh, is this too much? You're going to start to think that that's what they're thinking. They could just like simply look over to the side and you're like, oh God, they're thinking this, right? We do it all the time. And, when I'm talking to clients and they're going through, they're like, I don't know why this didn't close. Like, I'm like, sure, let's walk through it. And they'll be like, yeah, so they just didn't have the money. And it didn't seem like their husband was on board. I'm like, okay, what did they say? And they're like, well, I don't know. She said she'd have to talk to him. And I'm like, so what about that says that she doesn't have the money and he's not on board? Right? Like, okay. So, people, you just think, oh, they have to talk. Oh, it's probably too much money. No, maybe they just, if it's a $10,000 purchase, they talk to their partner about it, which is probably a good sign of a good relationship, right? You talk about throwing that out there, right? But people often just go automatically to what they think that that means. And so, it's so important to really, like we said before, get to the bottom of what's going on, ask questions that would feel awkward if you were out for coffee, but you're not out for coffee. You're on a sales conversation.
I think budget is sometimes a really awkward thing for people to bring up, like, oh, do you have a budget for this? And then the person responds, no, I never really thought about it. Or, I've gotten better myself at asking because it's a genuine question. I'm not going to change my rates just because you said a higher number. I'm just going to be like, okay, cool. I know you can afford me. And because I know the value we bring, and I don't play those games where I don't know. Again, I just don't play those games. But I've gotten better about asking, and it's just really important because if you're nowhere near our rates, like okay, well then we've got to find a different option for you because we're not that option. But maybe I can point you in a different direction, and it just saves us time. Yeah, I wish I would have learned that sooner.
Yeah, it's so important. And I was actually talking to a client this morning who has like a wedding venue. And when people come in to take a look and see if they want to book and all that sort of stuff, um, I was like, so when do you ask them about the budget? And she was like, I don't. And I was like, okay, that should be one of the first things, right? So we worked through this whole different way to increase the conversions during those tours. But we got to get these answers, right? And if they are completely underneath, you got to know that going in. If they're somewhere close, yeah, we can probably work with that, right? But yeah, it is really important to like go deep on these things because then you know where you're at and you're not wasting anybody's time, and also you're making sure that you're giving them something that's going to work for them.
Exactly. And I can think of one particular time when I did not ask about their budget and they were severely under, like I don't think there's anybody on the planet who would have gone with their budget. So it
Yeah.
would have been nice to know up front because I could have educated them instead of getting their hopes up that they were going to be able to work with us and have their problem solved. And, I could have
Yep.
kind of given them more, okay, realistically, here's where you are in the industry as a whole. Maybe you could
Yep.
find somebody who could help you do this, but you're not going to be able to get that budget, get what you want with that budget really anywhere. So no, you're totally right. Especially with a wedding venue. Gosh, yes, that's definitely definitely an
Yeah.
important thing to know for sure.
But,
Um,
it feels sometimes it feels uncomfortable. And I always say, like with sales, like, you got to get comfortable being a little bit uncomfortable. Like some of the questions that you have to ask, and if you're going to get a higher conversion rate, you have to ask some questions that might normally feel a little bit awkward, and just get used to that, right? Just be used to. And the amount of people that I've gone really deep with and then met them later, whether I was selling for my program, somebody else's program, whatever the case may be, but like meeting up with them, like they'd come and give me a huge hug and be like, thank you for seeing what could be possible for me. Thank you for holding me to that. It was way more than I wanted to spend. It was terrifying. It was all these things. And at the end of the day, it was the best thing I've ever done. And I wouldn't have done it if you didn't hold that space. Right. And so, you just got to sometimes make them a little like some people have gotten mad at me because I pulled out so much truth about
mm,
their fears and their beliefs. And they were like, okay, I don't know. I'm like, okay, well, let's talk tomorrow. Just leave it. And the next day they're like, I can't believe that. I was mad at you, but now I realize how much I need this. And I'm like, okay, great. You know what I mean? So it's sometimes you just have to go a little bit deeper than you might want to in the moment until it becomes a reflex.
that makes a lot of sense too. And the way that you're saying that you pull things out that maybe they're mad, but then they realize, oh gosh, she's actually 100% true. I can think of scenarios where I've seen people sabotaging their campaigns on the PR side of things
Hmm.
just because there was some fear keeping them back. And I knew that they were going to be disappointed in their launch, like, because I'm trying not to go into specifics on people, but I knew that they were going to be disappointed. And that this one little thing that was preventing them from telling the whole story, going all in, was going to, like, it was maybe only 20% of the whole thing, but I knew it was going to result in 80% of the results. And
Hmm.
I'm just, yeah, I've seen it, and it's heartbreaking to be on the other side and see that for them. So interesting that you got to get uncomfortable. I like that you kind of said that you're not out for coffee. It's not a date, you're not trying to marry them.
Exactly.
Interesting. And
Yeah.
I know when we first started talking, you joked about your dad being a used car salesman and how you've heard all the jokes and everything. But I remember one thing you said, that he even had his days where he was like, "Oh my gosh, can I do this?" And it's like, wait, he was top 1%. How on earth could he have imposter syndrome ever? So
Oh
yeah, I
yeah.
found that interesting.
Yeah, like sales is a roller coaster. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing it. It doesn't matter how great you are at it. It's always going to feel like a roller coaster at some point. And throughout those 41 years, so let's say for the last 39 years, he's ended up in the top 1%. Still in his 40th year, there'd be times he'd come home and he'd be like, well, I've lost it. And I'm like, oh, you lost it again, did you? I'm like, didn't you just sell 3 cars yesterday? He's like, yep, but none today. I'm like, okay. And then, if that went on for like, let's say 3 days, then he would be like, I've seriously lost it. I've seriously lost it. I'm like, yeah, I know, Dad, but tomorrow's going to be a big one. And then sure enough, he'd go and sell 5. You know what I mean? Like, but there's those moments, especially when, it's your bread and butter. It's money coming in or it's not. And so it's very easy to get swept up in that. And then he'd always be like, well, anyways, gotta keep plugging away. That was always his thing. Gotta keep plugging away. And he'd go back in it, and he didn't know that what he was doing was a type of like mindfulness, right? But he would clear it out and just be focused with the client in front of him, not thinking about, I need to get this sale, whatever. All of that has to leave, all of it. Because the moment that you start thinking, oh, I better make this sale, are they going to close? Halfway through the call, you're like 60%, 70%. Ooh, I don't know. Like if your mind is there, you're not being present, and your chances go way down, right? So you just gotta let all that go, be very present with that person, stay in that moment, operate from that space, which is part of the energy that goes into selling.
Yeah. As you were saying that, I was like, oh my gosh, yes. So, we both adore James Wedmore, and, he's constantly saying your success is effing inevitable. And so I love, it's like, just keep plugging away, just keep going. That one, that's the next one isn't the end of the road, no matter what. And I love that you said the energetics behind it, because we do sometimes put so much energy, desperate energy. This one has to work. This one has to be, oh my gosh, if they don't sign, there's never going to be another potential client ever. And, that's dramatizing it a little bit, but sometimes we do get there.
Yep.
And I know for myself, there have been droughts in the past. And if I sit back and look at it, I know that it's my ego actually trying to protect me, because it doesn't want that rejection, or it doesn't want that bad client anymore. Or it's, as I look back at it, I can see my ego, its number one job is to keep change from happening, because change is scary, change is dangerous. And so I can look back and see it's all the energetics of it. And so once I cleared that, and then I stopped looking at every single potential client as, this one's the one, this one has to happen. And it just shifted. And it was like, oh, well, if they're meant to work with me, I know I can solve their problem. If they're meant to work with us, then cool. You know,
Yeah.
it's daily practice, mind you, sometimes, but
Yes. And that, also the saying of like, let go to let in. Um, the amount of times where I've found myself caught up in exactly that, where I'm like, oh man, I could really use this money to come in. Like, I really hope that I get this sale. Like, I got to get this sale. And then I'll catch myself, and it's not coming, and they haven't responded, and da da da. And literally, I can count many times where I've just been like, hey, you know what? It doesn't matter. On to the next. It's fine. Just if they come, whatever. And like literally within an hour of that complete energetic release of that person, I'll get a ping that's like, okay, hey, yeah, I just signed up. Da 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 da. I'm like, oh my God. Yep, there we go. More proof to detach, right? Let go. And then that just allows so much more to come in.
you're so right. Detaching, I know, is hard. It took me a while and I'm not perfect at it, but I'm much better at detaching. And it it is hard to kind of switch from that, gotta always be closing mentality, to the, I've presented my solution, and it's a great deal. Like I mentioned earlier, like it's on them now, whether or not they choose. And how did you get to that place where you could detach, without having to try so hard to detach?
Like you said, it's a constant practice, right? But what I've done over the past, it's getting, I mean, easier and easier. There'll be like, I'll notice this urgency for a little bit, right? Like I'll notice it for maybe an afternoon, or maybe even sometimes 24 hours. Like I'll notice that feeling of like dread of like, oh man, where's that next thing coming from? Oh man, like that kind of mentality. And then I'm able to be like, okay, well, what if we literally got nothing for the next 2 months? Well, you'd still be fine because this, that, and the other. Okay, great. Right. So just allowing myself to let that go. Is it where exactly I want to be? No. But if it doesn't happen, it's not like I'm going to be living on a street or in a shelter or something. Right. And I know that. So I have to remind myself that even if I'm still safe, right? Because it's that
Mm,
part of the brain that's being triggered
safe
is that
thing.
you're not going to be safe. You're not going to be safe. So sometimes for me, it's like, okay, let's walk through the worst case scenario. Worst case scenario is this, right? And there's always a solution. So there's that. And then whenever I'm trying to change like a natural inclination to think or kind of behave in a certain way, I keep an evidence journal. So
Oh,
if I'm trying to switch from attachment to the outcome to detachment from the outcome, but my brain is telling me, no, we got to be really concerned about this, right? We got to be really concerned. We need to just focus on this. And I'm trying to teach it. No, we don't. And that has better results. Then I will keep at the back of my journal evidence of every time that I detached and actually got the outcome that I wanted. And
love
I
that.
write all of that down and then I can go through it. And the more that you write it down, it's more that you're proving to your subconscious brain that this is actually possible. And you're literally changing the neuron firing in the neural networks in your brain to start to think that way instead of the other because it's got the positive reinforcement. So I have so many different evidence journals, every different shifts of behavior and thought processes that I have in the back of random journals. And it's like, oh, I remember when I was working on that one.
I love that. I recently did that myself where I went and found one of my other journals or my, I always write out kind of like my ideal day or my ideal agency or, various things. I'm writing everything all the time, but I'll go back and look and be like, dang, I did hit that goal like super easy. And like, oh yeah, that's true now. Huh, I wanted that then, but now this is true. And it's evident time and time again. And you're right. When we detach, it does come so much faster. And I once heard somebody say that you kind of think of money and like sales like a friend. You wouldn't be like, hey, 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 so you're gonna stay, right? Hey, you're gonna stay, right? Hey, so what are you doing? Hey, hi. That friend would be like, oh my gosh, go away. So it's
That's
the thing.
hilarious. I love that.
It's the thing with sales and money. It's like, don't be a five-stage clinger.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, totally. Right. And I mean, there is, so much evidence that the ebb and the flow of money is a natural thing, right? It's energy, it's abundance. It's supposed to go back and forth. And, when people work from a place of scarcity, even, working with entrepreneurs for so long as I have, some people, especially when they're newer to the game, I find particularly are like, oh no, there's somebody else in my field. Well, of course there is. There's however many people on this planet, there's going to be other people that do something similar, but you are unique and people will like you more than that person or vice versa. And there's going to be little things that you had to add. And so when we operate from a place of abundance instead of scarcity, it allows for so much more connection and in turn, so many more abilities to actually become abundant. And if I'm abundant, then and you're abundant, then we get to be abundant together and we collect more abundance and we can work with each other and off of each other. And you know what I mean? Like, so there's also that. It's like everything flows in and out, just like regular energy, just like you have a really good sales week and then you don't have the best sales week. Right. And so life ebbs and flows always, and it's always changing. And you just got
You're
to kind
making
of
me
go
think
with
of
it.
I I can think of so many times where will maybe either a client doesn't renew their contract or we didn't get that particular sale, but then almost immediately an even better one or a more aligned one or a more interesting topic or something like that comes along and it just seems to happen time and time again. And, I think especially women, we're sometimes afraid of even firing clients. And I can tell you that this one particular time in my life, I would literally get chest pains when I would see a text or an email or something that would remind me of the person, literal chest pains. And finally, I remember sitting at my desk and going, no, this isn't working. This is not working. I'm going to have to be okay with losing that money because I am having actual physical pain from working
Mhm.
with this client. And the one particular one I can think of, No joke. 24 hours later, new client, totally aligned energy. And it's just, once you just remind yourself that is true, that happens, then you can see it happening over and over again. So
Yeah, I love that you did. I've had that in the past as well. And, just each day being like, oh, I got to deal with this. Like, and when you think about it from an energetic perspective, right? All of that energy that's going into being annoyed, being angry, being frustrated is much better spent attracting positivity. And when you are in that state on a regular basis, like if that text makes you feel that way, we also have to remember, right, that we are attracting at our vibrational level. So if that person is bringing us to a lower vibrational level, we're just bringing in more lower vibrational stuff, right? So if we can let that go so that we can maintain a higher vibration, I mean, this is why all the good things come to us once we let that go. The universe is like, oh, she's ready. Okay, perfect. Here we go. Here's something for you.
yep. And for people who are like, wait, what are you talking about? Energetics and vibration and whatnot. And it's like, that goes back to all of us, energy is everywhere. We are energy. Dollar bills are energy. My microphone is energy. My microphone's putting off vibration. The computer's everything is putting off vibration. The earth is putting off vibrations. Water is like, everything is putting off vibration. And we have to match that vibration of what we want. And we can control. And you're right, like anxiety and fear, those are all very low vibration. And as you were saying that in my head, I was like, oh my gosh, I could totally see where that has happened in the past, where I allowed myself to maintain that low vibration. And so we kept getting these crappy leads. Not that the people were crappy, the projects weren't what we needed, or they didn't have the budget, or it just wasn't the right lead. And it's like, why? Had I thought about it at the time, I would have been able to go, oh, well, we keep attracting the vibration we're sitting at, so we should change that.
Yeah. And, some people that aren't, well versed in this type of stuff that we're talking about, right? It can sound a little bit out there, but there is actually a lot of like research done on these vibrational effects and just the connection between like through vibration, right? And which is energy, right? And so I just think it's fascinating. And during my time at the university for like the applications of mindfulness, learned so much about all of this stuff from a bunch of neuroscientists, right? And it was just to me the most fascinating thing. And then to just practice putting it into practice, right? Just watching the results shift. And they're like, well, is this a placebo effect? Well, if it is, it's a great one. So I don't really care. But the whole point is the more joy and the more positivity that you can push out, the more that's going to come back. And so, whether you call that a placebo effect or not, I have watched it time and time again in my own life, in my friends' lives, in my clients' lives. And it's a huge part of the success in which you achieve.
100%. And yeah, it can sound woo, or it can sound new agey, or whatever you want to call it, but it's literally just science. They are proving it time and time again. And it's why dogs can sense fear. Well, they're just picking up on your vibration of fear. Like it's like, it's
Yeah.
really not that special or magical. It's just science. And so yeah, it's the way I try to describe it to people too is like, when you walk into a room and you're goes, oh my gosh, I could feel the tension, cut it with a knife. It's like, that's what you're feeling, is their frequency, their vibration. And one of the books I'm reading is literally called Quantum Physics. It's very bland. If I had it on the audiobook and a long car ride. And so I had it playing, and poor Sienna was in the back, and she didn't realize it was an audiobook. She thought it was a podcast. And I said, so what do you think about what you heard from the quantum physics stuff? She goes, well, I think that podcast guy should have a more exciting voice. I just thought it was so funny that was her takeaway, that because he is very, very bland. It's like a textbook, but
Mhm.
getting to understand all those things is rather interesting. And it makes all these other things that I'm reading, now that I understand the deep science behind it, I'm like, oh, that's not weird at all. Okay, got it. I know exactly why it's working. Um,
Yeah. And I think,
it feels
unfortunately,
magical.
It does feel magical. And I mean, I actually think that, the earth and the universe is quite a magical place. And we're far more connected than we often think to believe that we are. And our abilities of communication and connection go far beyond what, our five senses and what have you, and speech and all of that stuff. And, essentially, like as humans, we're so busy. There's always things to do and there's things to look at. And, oh, I got to check my email and whatever, that we often cut off those parts of ourselves is the first thing to go, right? For the more mundane day to day things. And animals don't have to check the email. So they're still very much in tune with that. Right. And when I was living in Thailand, before I left, I went and stayed for 2 months down on one of the islands on the beach. And I'd had a nice day. I had gone swimming. I like got back, had a shower, was just going to like go to eat soon. And I was walking by the lobby, and on the TV was like tsunami alert for that island. And I was like, oh, okay. So I went in and I was like, how do I get off the island? And they're like, oh, you can't. Because we've shut down all the boats, and in case the tsunami comes, you can't be on the boat. I'm like, so I'm supposed to be on the island during the tsunami. Like this in my head, I'm like, well, let's hurry up and get there then. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, I've never been in a tsunami, so I'm not very well versed in them. And I was like, so what do I do? Like, I just sit here and hope that it doesn't come. And they literally said to me, go like stay outside, either on your balcony or like down by like the beach or whatever. Stay outside during the warning time. And the moment that you see the birds and animals going inland, you run as fast as you can and you get as high as you can. And I was like, whoa, because they're sensing it from super far away. So if you're paying attention, you could potentially get high and far enough, right? And so, but I mean, I didn't really feel really confident in that information because right behind me was like a cliff going up. And I was like, ooh, let's see how good my climbing skills are. But it's just amazing, right? Like that was what they do. They say, sit outside and watch the animals. I'm like, okay, because they're sensing it from so far away.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, I guess that explains how like your animals know that you're coming home 5 minutes, 30 minutes before you even come home. Uh, we watch it on the camera. Sometimes we're like Bougie, especially we're like, how does she know we're already on our way? And she just perks up like, oh, I know Dad's here. It's just insane, but they're just more in tune. You're right. They don't check the email.
Exactly. They're just
And,
waiting for you to come
especially
home so they hear it.
yeah, and it's like, well, Bougie, she's not worried that she's not going to get food. She's not worried. She's not in fear of anything. So she's completely living in a high vibration. And I mean, her name's Bougie for crying out loud. Uh, but man, this has been so amazing. I know I could talk to you for hours, and so I know you've got courses coming up, and you've got new things you're working on. Hopefully, another book coming out. I guess tell people your website or the best way to connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me at kandisjames.com.
Thank you so much, and I know there are some nuggets that people got from this. So let's change our mindset around sales and go solve some problems.